Good evening, everyone. Hello. Welcome, everyone, to the National Killam Program Celebration of Excellence. Bienvenue à tous à la célébration de l'excellence du Programme National Killam. I'm Nala Ayed, and I'm the host of Ideas. It's also my pleasure to host this evening's ceremony. Thank you. Did it sound like I was waiting for applause? Because I was. No. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all and to also host this evening's ceremony. The reason I'm here is that we at Ideas and the Killam Prize are aligned on one very basic value, and that is the value of ideas. Ideas that across time and place help us understand the moment in which we find ourselves and to help make us better human beings. We are super proud at Ideas to have collaborated with the Killam Prize through the years, and I've been the lucky one in this whole thing, in that I've had the privilege of interviewing the extraordinary researchers that it celebrates. Every year we produce a special episode featuring the laureates and their work. I have to say, ask you to stay tuned for it in the weeks ahead as a podcast as well as a radio broadcast. And if you need a reminder, we air at 8 p.m. weekdays on CBC Radio 1. And you can find us anytime around the world on podcast or at cbc.ca/ideas. This is all to say that Ideas is recording tonight's proceedings for broadcast, and the event is also being live streamed for those who couldn't make it in person. So if I could ask you to keep the conversation to a minimum during the ceremony itself, and that would be a great help to the audiovisual team. And if I could also ask you to check this moment to make sure your cell phone is on silent, because there's only one thing worse than having to fumble to switch off the phone when it goes off unexpectedly at a public event, and that is the moment being broadcast to hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of radio listeners. So now is a really good moment to double check that your device is not going to do that to you. Thank you in advance for your consideration. We are gathered here tonight at Massey College, which wishes us to acknowledge that we are on treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and Haudenosaunee peoples. The college strives to empower the next generation of thinkers and leverage the great intellectual wealth of interdisciplinary, intergenerational, inclusive, and informed community in service of the public good. We gather to celebrate the advancement of knowledge and, importantly, the translation of knowledge into ideas. Ideas that expand our understanding of the universe, that help address critical health and societal issues, and that help communities thrive. Let's take a moment to reflect on how this aligns with Indigenous knowledge practices since time immemorial. Let us embrace seven-generation thinking and respect Indigenous ways of sharing knowledge to the benefit of our communities, the environment, and understanding of the world. Let's set an intention to consider how place and culture shape our perspectives and imagine the research potential of bridging Western and Indigenous knowledge systems. Tonight marks another important moment in the history of the National Killam Program. Cet événement marque un moment important dans l'histoire du Programme National Killam, the celebration of the 2024 cohort of the Killam Prize and Dorothy Killam Fellowship recipients. It's a real honor to be here to celebrate these excellent researchers, their teams, and their supporters. C'est un honneur pour moi d'être ici pour rendre hommage à ce groupe estimé de chercheurs et à leurs équipes et à ceux qui les soutiennent. Among those supporters are friends and family of laureates, as well as university representatives. Many of you, of course, have flown across the country to be here for this special occasion tonight. Your dedication to what the Killam Program and its prize represents is sincerely appreciated, and I want to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you. As you settle in to the end of your meal, although it looks like you're done, let me speak a little bit more briefly about the National Killam Program. It is privately funded by the Killam Trust through the generous contribution of Dorothy J. Killam. Its goal is to build Canada's future by encouraging advanced study. The Killam Trusts have provided more than $1 billion for higher education in Canada. and there are more than 8,300 Killam laureates worldwide. The National Killam Program found a new home at the National Research Council in 2022. That follows more than half a century of program delivery by the Canada Council for the Arts. So this is the second year of program administration by the NRC. Right now, I would like to welcome Bernie Miller. He's managing trustee with the Killam Trust and a history enthusiast who, fittingly, he'll explain a little bit more about the Killam legacy.
Now, as the host of my favorite radio program, I listen to it at CBC overnight in Halifax. So I don't listen at 8 o'clock, I listen when I can't sleep. And the challenge is I listen and I can't sleep because it's such a good program. So bienvenue and welcome. Isaac Walton Killam was from Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Dorothy Brooks Johnson was from St. Louis, Missouri. They met at a party in Montreal, and they were opposites. She was outgoing and vivacious, and he was shy and aloof. And as opposites do, they attracted. Their initial attraction turned into a lifetime partnership in business and in life, one that has created a lasting legacy for Canada, including, as Nala said, over $1 billion in scholarships, fellowships, and prizes to over 8,000 recipients of the very highest distinction, many of whom are in the room. Killam Trust was created by Mrs. Killam to help in the building of Canada's future through advanced research and study, to both encourage and reward research excellence. Dorothy Killam and her husband, Isaac Walton Killam, lived through the last major global pandemic, the industrialization of Canada, 2 world wars, and the social and economic and geopolitical changes of both the Depression and the post-war period of rapid growth in Canada. Now, Mrs. Killam created the Killam Trust towards the end of her long life after experiencing these history-changing events. Her exceptional bequest showed that despite the global turmoil of her lifetime, she was always optimistic about the future of Canada and had a foundational confidence in the power of research and scholarship to help shape Canada's future. So each of this year's Killam Prize winners have demonstrated they have achieved a level of research excellence deserving of the recognition of their peers and all Canadians. Together with the Dorothy Killam Fellowship awardees, your accomplishments are consistent with the aspirations of the Killams to help build Canada's future through advanced study. Now, the Governor General of Canada has recognized this by issuing a citation to each of you, recognizing you as visionaries, as critical thinkers, as problem solvers, who are addressing the needs of our ever-changing society and responding to the challenges faced not just by Canadians, but by humanity. So we're again experiencing dramatic change and global disruption, and the continuity of our confidence in the power of research to solve the most daunting challenges and open up new vistas for thriving and for well-being persists. So at the national level, we thank the Canada Council for the Arts and the National Research Council for partnering with us as we carry on the legacy of Mrs. Killam and our national Killam programs, consisting of the Killam Prizes, the recently launched Dorothy Killam Fellowship, and now the Killam NRC Paul Corkum Fellowships. We especially thank all of those involved in the national Killam programs. The Killam Prize and the Dorothy Killam Fellowship winners honored here today demonstrate excellence in research and attainments were at the very foundation of Mrs. Killam's confidence in the future of Canada. So on behalf of the trustees of the Killam Trusts, Brenda Eaton, Jim Dinning, and the Honorable Kevin Lynch, and those who have gone before us, and on behalf of the Killams themselves, congratulations on your accomplishments. They will truly help in the building of Canada's future, and thank you everyone for being here today to celebrate. I could tell we're in a very celebratory mood and sharing our hopes in the future of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie Miller. The next speaker that I'd like to introduce tonight is Arthur B. MacDonald. Professor MacDonald is a Nobel Physics Laureate from Sydney, Nova Scotia. He has degrees from Dalhousie and Caltech, in addition to 15 honorary degrees. Among his many positions in Canada and abroad, Professor MacDonald was the director of the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory, or SNO, experiment. For this, he received the 2015 Nobel Prize in Physics and the 2016 Breakthrough Prize in Fundamental Physics with the SNO collaboration. He continues to be active in basic research on neutrinos and dark matter. Welcome, Professor MacDonald.
So I'm honored to be here tonight for the presentation of the Killam Awards. I'm particularly interested in these awards because I actually met Dorothy Killam when I was doing my master's degree in physics at Dalhousie in 1964. That's 1964. I got a birthday card from a colleague in August saying happy 3 to the 4th. So. At the time, I was studying the lifetime of positrons in metals using radioactive sources. And it turned out to be a very productive study as we learned that lifetimes of positrons in metals are related to the number of defects in the materials. It's actually one of my most cited papers, except for the Snow Project papers that led to the Nobel Prize. Positron annihilation measurements were later used to study defects in tubing in the CANDU reactors due to neutron bombardment, and so it turned out to have a practical use as well. At the time, Dorothy Killam was touring universities to consider how she would distribute funds in her will, and she'd been told I was studying nuclear physics. So she came into my laboratory and she said, "Okay, show me a nucleus." So I showed her traces on an oscilloscope of positrons annihilating with electrons and creating gamma rays, and told her what we were doing. And she was genuinely interested. It was a very good conversation. She wanted to know about the science, and she asked very good questions. And so I think what was just said about her interest in science and education is very legitimate. About 10 years later, positron emission tomography was invented, and it's now a very effective diagnostic tool in medicine, because when a positron finds an electron, they produce, when they annihilate, E equals mc squared, and the E, in this case, from the masses disappearing, is 2 gamma rays that come out back to back. So positron emission tomography consists of putting a number of detectors, let's say it's your head that you're studying, number of detectors around your head, and looking for when flashes happen in 2 detectors at the same time on either sides of the device, and then you connect the lines and you see where the activity is. And it's been a very good medical diagnostic tool that even has been used to detect what part of your brain lights up when you're listening to music. It really is something that, in our case, doing very basic research of simply understanding how do positrons interact in materials, ended up being a very valuable eventual product that is of value to society as a whole. And that's something that happens very commonly, and it's a very strong reason for why we need the sort of support that the Killam prizes and fellowships give to, in many cases, very basic science. And it's a justification for that that's not always recognized. I personally have benefited directly from the Killam Foundation because I won a Killam Fellowship in 1998 and the Killam Prize in 2010. The fellowship came just as we were turning on the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory, and it provided teaching relief for me at a time when I really needed to spend time on site in Sudbury. It really aided my research program just as it is intended to do. And it certainly is true that the Killam Fellowship helped me and our team to win a Nobel Prize in physics. And so that's one concrete example of the sort of thing that these fellowships given to young people at a time when teaching relief to concentrate on research is important to them can really be beneficial. The Killam Prize in 2010 came just after the snow experiment had stopped taking data, and it was very valuable to me again because I was just starting to figure out, okay, what do I do now? And it was enabling me to explore experiments that I'm still working on today. One of them is a recycling of the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory to enable us to make measurements of other properties of neutrinos that are part of to attempt to answer the question of why this universe is made essentially entirely of matter, made of electrons, not made of antimatter. Positrons, in the case of electrons, are the antimatter of positrons, and it's just as well. I think it'd be a pretty exciting place if we had positrons coming out of the corners here and producing bursts of gamma rays all over the room, but that doesn't happen. And it doesn't even happen if you look in the faintest locations in the universe. It really is a universe dominated by matter. The question of how that occurred will be answered, we hope, in perhaps a validation of a theory that suggests that properties of neutrinos have a significant impact on how that occurs back in the early universe. I'm also involved in several major experiments to search for dark matter. Actually, Marie-Cécile Pirot, one of the fellowship winners this evening, is someone who works in the same area. I was very pleased to congratulate her. I've known her for a number of years, and it's just an example for me of the quality of the people you're selecting in this program. And our question is, what is that dark matter that's known to occupy the dark space between the stars when you look out on a starry night? Sorry, that's the wrong, that's bad grammar. They're there even if you don't look out on a starry night. But anyway, the space between the stars appears to have about 5 times as much mass contained in it as the stars themselves. And the stars is us, essentially the same material that makes up the stars. In fact, the materials that we're made from, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, are actually produced in stars like the sun. And in fact, the studies we made of neutrinos, which were telling us how the sun burns, what are the nuclear reactions that power it, is a strong validation of how the buildup of nuclei in a sequence in the sun gets up to carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. That's primarily where the carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, which are big components of ourselves, is created. But we now have 5 times as much dark matter as we have ordinary matter, and that's borne out by measurements that are made across the universe using things like using Einstein's general relativity to look at focusing of the light from very distant objects. We see also in the whole universe about 5 times as much dark matter as we do ordinary matter. But we have no idea what it is. It doesn't fit into anything that we know in terms of the basic particles we've observed so far. And so what we're doing in a rejuvenated underground laboratory in Sudbury, which is called Snow Lab, it's 2 kilometers underground, and it is an ultra-clean Class 200 laboratory entirely in its structure, is look for us banging into dark matter as we move through our galaxy. We know it's there because of its gravitational effects. We're putting various types of material in our detectors. By being ultra clean and removing local radioactivity, and by being deep to remove the cosmic rays that otherwise would give us something like the northern lights in our detectors, we're able to get very few interfering events. And so, for example, in the things that I'm working on using liquid argon, we have detectors running at 200 degrees below 0 Celsius, and that's the target that we use to see if dark matter particles produce a small signal, which we look for by digitizing every pulse that comes out. And so making these decisions of what do I work on after I finish with the snow project, the Killam Prize came at a very opportune time for me in my career, both as a more junior faculty member when I had the teaching relief at that time, and also giving me the opportunity to explore other things. So I'm very pleased to participate in the award ceremony this evening, and I congratulate all of the winners of both the fellowships and the prizes, and I know that these are going to be very beneficial to you in terms of continuing with your careers. So well done. And I apologize, I'm going to have to run out at the end of this. I have to catch a plane to get to Italy this evening. So I apologize if I don't get a chance to talk to everyone before I go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor McDonald. Enjoy your break. To present the certificates to this year's cohort of Dorothy Killam Fellows, I'd like to invite the Killam trustees, Jim Dinning and Bernie Miller, to the stage. The fellows being honored tonight all work to advance knowledge and improve society, and they do so in a wide array of ways. They focus on developing and improving fuel cells to meet clean energy needs. They assess sexual assault law reforms in Canada. They identify histories and events within the disability community in Canada. They explore regions of the brain involved with sensory differences in autism. They look at how to make Arctic marine shipping across Inuit Nunavut more sustainable and self-determined. They examine how drug interventions like safer supply and decriminalization impact structurally marginalized young people. It is my honor to present the 2024 Dorothy Killam Fellows, and I'll do so by sharing a little bit more about each project and then inviting each fellow to join us on the stage. First, Amy Baslak. Dr. Baslak is a professor in the Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering at the University of Toronto. She is the Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in Clean Energy. Dr. Baslak is the first researcher in North America to perform operando synchrotron X-ray imaging on fuel cells and electrolyzers. Dr. Baslak's fellowship project focuses on development of new catalyst-coated membranes to overcome cost and performance challenges of fuel cells, water electrolyzers, and CO2 electrolyzers, which have great potential to meet clean energy needs. In this work, Dr. Baslak will identify, control, and validate the key catalyst-coated membrane design parameters that influence durability, cost, and electrochemical performance. Dr. Baslak is dedicated to advancing clean electrochemical energy conversion technologies to help build a sustainable future. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Amy Baslak. Next, Elaine Craig. Dr. Craig is professor of law at Schulich School of Law at Dalhousie University. She is also the director of research at Watershed Legal Projects. Dr. Craig's research aims to greatly improve our empirical understanding of legal process in relation to sexual offenses. A lot of research exists that examines judicial reasoning in sexual assault cases, but there has been very little study of Crown processing of sexual assault cases, the practice of sexual assault law, the investigation of sexual offenses, or sexual assault trials themselves. Dr. Craig's fellowship project will examine how decades of law reforms aimed at eliminating discriminatory stereotypes and practices from Canadian sexual assault law have yet to achieve their intended efforts. Seen as an outstanding scholar in the field who has had significant influence on multiple legal institutions, Dr. Craig aims to greatly improve our empirical understanding of legal process in relation to sexual offenses. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Elaine Craig. And now Jackie Dawson. Dr. Dawson is a professor at the University of Ottawa. She is the Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in Human and Policy Dimensions of Climate Change. And she is Scientific Director of ArcticNet, a Canada network of centers of excellence for Arctic science. The melting Arctic and potential shifting of global trade routes could create one of the most profound environmental and geopolitical disturbances of our time. Dr. Dawson's fellowship project aims to understand the impact and risks of Arctic marine shipping across Inuit Nunavut, that is Arctic Canada. The project will identify and evaluate strategies for sustainable and self-determined risk mitigation. The work builds directly on previous projects led by Dr. Dawson, including Arctic Corridors and Northern Voices and the Arctic Shipping Project. Dr. Dawson is recognized for positioning Canada as a world leader on Arctic shipping governance and for research approaches that support Indigenous self-determination in science. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Jackie Dawson. These descriptions are long and deservedly so. It's important work. Dr. Cora DeBeck is next. Dr. DeBeck is a distinguished associate professor in the School of Public Policy at Simon Fraser University. She is also a research scientist with the BC Centre on Substance Use. Dr. DeBeck has a strong commitment to addressing social inequities and promoting positive change through inclusive engagement, public outreach, compassionate advocacy, and research integrity. Dr. DeBeck's research focuses on the toxic drug crisis and applies data-driven science to evaluate and inform public policies to effectively address substance use and related harms. Her fellowship project underscores the need for rigorous scientific evidence to understand the strengths, limitations, and impacts of policy interventions related to the drug poisoning crisis. Dr. DeBeck's work is expected to be barrier-breaking, positioned to transform current approaches to substance use and to save lives. Please join us in congratulating Dr. Cora DeBeck. Next, it's Marie-Cécile Pirot. Dr. Pirot is an associate professor in the Department of Physics at the University of Alberta. She's also an adjunct professor in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences at Dalhousie University. Dr. Pirot's work examines one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of our universe, dark matter. Astronomical and cosmological observations imply the presence of a new form of matter, different from ordinary matter, like atoms and molecules. This dark matter is 5 times more abundant, but detecting its particles is extremely challenging. Dr. Pirot's research aims at achieving the milestone of realizing for the first time directional sensitivity in dark matter detectors by developing new cutting-edge technologies and creating cross-disciplinary connections. Her peers say that Dr. Pirot is well-positioned to lead this critical step toward claiming the discovery of dark matter and solidifying Canada's position as a world leader in particle astrophysics. Please help us congratulate Dr. Marie-Cécile Pirot. Next, we have Kathleen Sitter. Dr. Sitter is Associate Professor in the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary. She is the Canada Research Chair in Multisensory Storytelling in Research and Knowledge Translation. Her peers tell us that Dr. Sitter's contributions to the field have significantly impacted human rights for people with disabilities by successfully influencing legislative changes and enhancing public education. With the goal of finding solutions to create inclusive societies, Dr. Sitter's work aims to identify histories and events as experienced and understood by people with disabilities in Canada. Her fellowship project addresses this through the development and implementation of a participatory sound and smell story mapping project. These are discovered, recorded, and narrated by people in the disability communities. Accessible and creative, the platform uncovers and amplifies disabled experiences. It aims to ensure the preservation of important histories, ones that center the voices of people with disabilities in Canadian culture. Please help us congratulate Dr. Kathleen Sitter. Now it's Ryan Stevenson's turn. Dr. Stevenson is an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology and the Brain and Mind Institute at Western University. Dr. Stevenson's work focuses on sensory information and processing with neurodiverse populations, particularly those with autism. While most people with autism exhibit sensory issues, the presentation of these issues varies drastically. That makes one-size-fits-all strategies for support less tenable. Dr. Stevenson's fellowship project will explore the regions of the brain involved with sensory differences in autism. It focuses on a large, well-characterized group of autistic children and adolescents. The work will examine differences between the sensory phenotypes in terms of cognitive abilities, clinical symptomology, and demographic factors. Dr. Stevenson is seen as an emerging leader in the field with many collaborations, including the Province of Ontario Neurodevelopmental Network. He's very dedicated to communicating findings to autistic individuals and their families. Congratulations to you, Ryan. Last but not least, Adam Wei Sen. Dr. Sen is a professor in the Department of Chemistry and the Institute for Quantum Computing at the University of Waterloo. Dr. Sen's research is focused on the study of novel quantum materials to harness their exotic properties for applications in computing and communications technologies, including quantum computing and quantum information. The development of quantum magnonics is currently hampered by the lack of available magnetic materials. The recently discovered class of two-dimensional magnets provides tremendous new opportunities. As one of the emerging leaders in the study of 2D materials, the goal of Dr. Sen's fellowship project is to electrically generate, detect, and control coherent magnons and magnon condensates in a 2D magnet for the very first time. The success of Dr. Sen's proposal can open a new research avenue for the global quantum community to use the complementary advantages of different physical platforms in a scalable architecture. It will further cement Canada's international stature in the quantum information and materials sectors. Please help us congratulate Dr. Adam Wei Sen. And join me in congratulating all the fellows for 2024. So now we've arrived at the final segment of the evening. It's time to honor the 2024 Killam Prize winners. This year's recipients have distinguished themselves through sustained research excellence, making a significant impact in their respective fields of natural sciences, social sciences, engineering, health sciences, and humanities. Killam Prize recipients are exceptional researchers, knowledge disseminators, and trailblazers in their fields. Killam trustees, again, Jim Dinning and Bernie Miller, will be presenting the certificates, and at the end, we'll have a conversation together here on the stage. We begin with the winner of the 2024 Killam Prize in Engineering, Clément Gosselin of Université Laval. Dr. Gosselin is a robotics researcher whose work has a tremendous impact on the field. He has revolutionized the area of robotic grippers by introducing dexterous, under-actuated robotic hands that are easy to control. Dr. Gosselin's current research focuses on the development of a new generation of robots that can safely and intuitively interact physically with humans. Dr. Gosselin is a leading international figure and has established himself as a prominent and very productive roboticist. Please join me again in welcoming and congratulating Dr. Clément Gosselin. Next, I am pleased to introduce the winner of the 2024 Killam Prize in Social Sciences, Tanya Lee of the University of Toronto. Although the world is urbanizing, at least half the population of Asia continues to live in rural areas under conditions that are still evolving. Dr. Lee's multi-decade field-based research is focused on Indonesia. It examines the changing rural scene from two angles. First, how family farmers and indigenous people adapt to new markets, generating change from below, and also changes generated from above. The challenges faced by rural people when large corporations occupy vast areas of land for plantations but offer few jobs. Dr. Lee's book, The Will to Improve, Governmentality, Development, and the Practice of Politics, is an account of development in action. It casts a critical eye on expert-driven development schemes that pay scant attention to local knowledge and livelihood practices. It has become a foundational work in the field of development studies. Once again, congratulations to Dr. Tanya Lee. And for the rest of you, feel free to stay where you are until you're ready to come up. You don't have to come up as soon, right away, as I'm reading the intro. If that suits you, it's up to you. Janine Marchissot is the winner of the 2024 Killam Prize in Humanities. She is of York University. Dr. Marchissot is one of Canada's leading media and art activism scholars. She specializes in community-based and site-specific public art exhibitions, research creation, and public outreach. She's a prolific and dynamic researcher, curator, collaborator, and teacher, and principal investigator for an initiative called Archive Counter-Archive, Activating Moving Image Heritage. The project addresses the crisis facing Canada's moving image heritage, focusing special attention on groups whose audiovisual materials are most at risk of disappearing. So that's BIPOC, LGBTQ+, women, and immigrant communities. At a time when our shared public world is so fragile, her peers see citizen scholars like Dr. Marchissot inspiring us to invest our intellectual, creative, and material resources in the democratizing work of active learning, bridge building, and sustainable dreaming. Congratulations, Dr. Janine Marchissot. Next, the winner of the 2024 Killam Prize in Natural Sciences, Sylvain Moineau of Université Laval. Dr. Moineau is a microbiologist and researcher renowned for his outstanding work on bacterial viruses called phages, and also pioneering discoveries on CRISPR-Cas systems, an adaptive immune system used by bacteria to defend against phages. He and his research group have developed an innovative, integrative approach to better understand the diversity, biology, and evolution of these specialized viruses. His peers note that the breakthrough findings made by Dr. Moineau and his team through a wide range of studies in different fields have dramatically changed our view of phage bacteria interactions. Dr. Monod's pioneering discoveries have inspired researchers around the world and paved the way for some of the most significant scientific advances in biotechnology and genome editing. Congratulations, Dr. Sylvain Monod. Finally, I am pleased to introduce the winner of the 2024 Killam Prize in Health Sciences, Gerard Wright of McMaster University. Dr. Wright is internationally renowned for his research on antimicrobial resistance. His work on antibiotics, their function, resistance, and biosynthesis has produced numerous landmark studies. These studies have shaped the direction of thought and activity in his field and are helping to save lives from the grave public health threat posed by AMR. Dr. Wright was the first to articulate the concept of a pan-bacterial resistome, encompassing the totality of antibiotic resistance elements in microbial communities, not just human pathogens. Through more than 30 years of groundbreaking research, Dr. Wright has developed a body of work that has unequivocally informed the global response to drug-resistance infections. Congratulations, Dr. Gerard Wright. And congratulations to all of you. This conversation will not do justice to the work that you all have done, but this will be just a teaser for hopefully for the episode we're going to have that will feature all of your work. First of all, congratulations to every one of you. Dr. Lee, I wanted to begin with you, if possible. Since we are on U of T turf, there we go. Since we are on U of T turf, we'll start with you, Dr. Lee. I wonder if you could talk about just what it means to you and your team to win the Killam Prize for Social Sciences.
Thank you. I think we all sort of churn away in our research worlds, often quite isolated one from another. We don't often actually talk about what we're doing, even in our home institution. I would say that from my own work, I have more of a readership and constituency globally than here at U of T. So it's nice to be recognized at home and in Canada. As you know, my research concerns topics very far away. Indonesia may feel like it has nothing much to do with anyone here in Canada or in the Killam Committee. But it does actually impact us in many ways, which we will talk about when we have more chance. But yeah, thank you.
So, but you've spent decades looking at the situation in Indonesia. I wonder if you could just tell us briefly what the most surprising or the most significant change that you've observed in that time.
So I'm not a romantic about rural poverty. It's not that, I look at a situation in a rural agrarian society and think everything should remain the same. So during the 30 years that I've researched in this field, things have changed enormously. People are involved in new production, new crops. What has changed, though, is perhaps the degree of integration into global markets. So, for example, I studied indigenous farmers who about 20 years ago decided to start growing cocoa. And we consume their cocoa in our chocolate here, but it's produced far away and in ways which, greatly transform the lives of people who get caught up in this kind of production. So if you think about what we are consuming here, coffee, tea, cocoa, sugar, and most recently palm oil, it's in half the products that we consume. It's all grown in Indonesia, in rural places, to which we are connected. And so what I've been interested in is, it's not all bad, it's not all good, but basically trying to understand what does this form of production that connects us globally actually mean to people at what I call the muddy end, the field end, where the stuff is grown.
So not so far away in terms of impact, after all. Thank you very much for that glimpse into your work. We'll be talking some more later. And no offense to the other universities, but I do wonder what's going on at Université Laval for us to get two of you. I'll ask you that, Dr. Monod. Comment expliquez-vous cette double victoire à l'Université de Laval?
Je pense qu'il était temps. I think it was time for us to be recognized. But yeah, it's an amazing recognition for it. And I want to thank the Killam Trust, and also I want to thank the selection committee for picking us. But it's a great honor.
What does it mean for you? I mean, it's a great honor, but what does it mean practically for you?
I think it means two things for me. I think, first of all, it might be a cliche kind of thing, but it's a teamwork. Really, it's recognized. First of all, it started at home. My wife, my kids, Marc-Stéphane and Samuel. It's a teamwork, and also all the talented graduate students that have come up in my group over the years. I mean, it's also their recognition of their work, right? And so there's that. And the second part would be that phage research is back. Because what I say that is because, so bacteriophage or phages are bacterial viruses. They're the most abundant biological entities on the planet. They're found everywhere. Phages are everywhere. They're on you, in you. We ate phages tonight. All right? So they're everywhere. And back in the day, they were discovered like 100 years ago. And in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, they were, if you wanted to study viruses, these were the viruses you study. And then it dwindled. It went back because we started studying human viruses, animal viruses, and all. And now in the past 20 years, these bacterial viruses are back into the limelight, and it's been fantastic. And let me recognize that as well, that this field is back now. Yeah.
Dr. Gosselin, félicitations. I wonder, quelle réaction avez-vous eu à la part de votre communauté là-bas, à Laval?
Disons, comme disait mon collègue, professeur Moineau, c'est sûr que ça reconnaît un travail d'équipe. Donc, effectivement, c'est un cliché de parler de cette façon, mais c'est toujours vrai dans la recherche. But I also want to say that receiving this award at this particular time, for me, it's very timely. And let me explain what I mean by this. My area of research is robotics. And like many other areas of research, robotics is impacted now by the recent progress of artificial intelligence. And so to the extent that many roboticists now think that if we can make robots intelligent enough, they will be able to do everything. Now, this is not going to happen if we don't at the same time work on the physical side of things, which is the essence of my work, physical intelligence. And so I think that receiving this award now will help to attract attention to this aspect of robotics, which is soon to become the bottleneck. So I think it's very important, and it's very important for robotics in Canada also.
Very timely indeed. The selection committee described your, quote, relentless desire to bridge the gap between robots and nature. Just beyond what you just outlined, which is the timeliness of this, what is it that drives you in this mission?
Well, I always say, when we develop robotic systems, we create something that does not exist. We say that scientists study the existing world, matter, biological world, and so on. Engineers create what does not yet exist, and robots are part of that. And so when we do that, we do lots of computations, simulations, and when we put these things together, it's like they become alive. And this is very rewarding from a research point of view. We create things that are basically new forms of life if we, extend it to that. Yeah.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, and congratulations to you both. Dr. Wright, hello. Antimicrobial resistance. I'm wondering if the young Dr. Wright thought you would end up in this field, and how you did end up in it.
That's a really good question. So I trained as a chemist, and I came up in the late 1980s, mid 1980s, when the HIV crisis was at its peak. So people were dying of infections like they were before the era of antibiotics. And so I started working on trying to find new drugs to treat fungal infections, which are relatively rare now, but at the time, if you're immune compromised, they're devastating. And that still happens to this day when, if you were to go to the hospital for cancer treatment where they deplete your immune system, you become susceptible to infection, in particular fungal infections. So that's what got me started really interested in infection. I didn't know anything about antibiotic resistance, to be honest. And then I did a postdoc in Boston, and that's where I got turned on to this issue. And I saw it happening to my clinical colleagues in real time. Like, they were dealing with the drugs failing, this is now 30 years ago, on their wards, and coming to us as fundamental researchers to say, why is this happening? What can we do about it? And that just kickstarted my interest in the area.
That's great. And now, many years later, you are being honored tonight with the Killam Prize. I wonder, at this stage in your career, what the Killam Prize might do for your work.
Well, I think like what you've heard a lot of people say is that it really draws attention to this. So this field, we tend to think of the medical field as dominated by things like cancer and diabetes, and that's all really important. But if we can't treat infections, we cannot treat those other diseases. And antimicrobial resistance is an existential threat to medicine as we practice it today. And I think this offers us an opportunity to highlight this really important area, because I guess that most people in the audience hadn't really thought about this, that if something bad happens to them, they end up in the hospital, the drugs might not work. And so this award, I think, is really going to provide an opportunity for us to highlight this really important crisis that we're in.
Thank you very much. Congrats again. Thank you. And finally, last but not least, Dr. Machiso, moving image heritage and preservation. Can you give an example of the kind of work that might have been overlooked or lost without this kind of research effort?
Well, my work is a lot about work that has been lost. So a really fast example is IMAX films. Canadian invention, grew out of Expo 67, and all of these films that were produced out of Ontario Place Corporation are in a state of decay and will be lost. So this is, my work is about a huge crisis that is facing audiovisual archives. But IMAX is a big story because people assume, well, IMAX, it's Canadian invention, these films must be taken care of, and in fact, they're not.
I've heard of this kind of work being done, for example, in Indigenous filmmaking or Inuit filmmaking, and I just wonder if you could speak to just the human impact of keeping that kind of material and preserving it for communities in Canada.
Yeah, a lot of the work that we've been doing as part of Archive Counter Archive has been tied to community archives, so Indigenous audiovisual archives, LGBTQ archives, Black communities, etc. But those archives, again, are at great risk, and the importance is that we cannot rely on the larger archives. We have to actually work with those archives to preserve those stories, and the importance is that there's no one size fits all with the archive. Every archive is used differently, means something differently in each community. So in Indigenous communities, by the way, there is no Indigenous audiovisual archive, and we recently had a conference where there's talk about the importance of creating it. But with Indigenous archives, there's stories, and stories mean different things depending on who is being addressed. Some stories are meant to disappear. Some stories are meant to be preserved. Some stories are meant to be passed on, but only to certain people. So it's very, very specific to each community.
And finally, just a quick word on what it means for your work to be here today and to be honored in this way.
Well, it's an incredible honor, as everybody has said, but also a recognition that this is a huge problem it's a global problem, but in the Canadian context, it's a huge problem. So we're continuing the work, and it really helps us to continue the work, but also just to gain the recognition that this is a problem.
Thank you so much. What a privilege to hear about all of your work. Just briefly, I look forward to longer conversations in the weeks to come. Thank you, and join me again in congratulating every single one of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're all free to go now. What a treat. Thank you very much. I'd like to now welcome our final speaker for the evening. Mitch Davies will say a few words on the relationship between the National Research Council and the Killam program. Prior to serving as president for the NRC, Mr. Davies was Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Innovation Fund at Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. Mr. Davies returned to the NRC as president in January 2024 after previously serving in the role in 2020-2021. Please welcome Mitch Davies.
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. It's a real pleasure to be here with everyone this evening. I want to thank the Killam Trust for their ongoing collaboration, Anala for hosting this evening's event for a second year in a row, Dr. McDonald for sharing his story, and I fear that you're still sitting here in front of me, and I hope you're going to make your plane on time. Massey College, of course, for welcoming us into this historic space, and all of you, importantly, for joining us to celebrate these esteemed researchers and scholars. What a great night for their achievements. We're all here tonight because of a shared commitment at the heart of the Killam Trust to build Canada's future through research and advanced study. And since 2022, the National Research Council of Canada has been pleased to work alongside the Killam Trust, our advisory board, and our selection committee to administer a research recognition program that exemplifies excellence. There are many in the audience this evening who have significantly contributed to the renewal of the National Killam program, and I'm so pleased to gather with them tonight to celebrate this year's recipients and to celebrate excellence together. The 2024 Killam laureates are leaders in their fields, and they exemplify a commitment to research and scholarship that we can all consider, and I know they will be there to encourage future generations of leaders across our country. As we've just heard, their work makes a difference, has a positive impact on Canada and Canadians, and indeed the world. Earlier this year, the Killam Trust and the NRC announced the creation of an exciting new fellowship opportunity under the National Killam Program banner. The Killam NRC Paul Corkum Fellowship honors Dr. Paul Corkum's outstanding contributions to research in Canada. Known as the father of attosecond molecular imaging. Now, for those that don't know what an attosecond is, and you can correct me if I get this wrong, an attosecond is to a second as a second is to 30 plus billion years. So that's what we're talking about, the very fast and the very small. Dr. Corkum gained an international recognition when he proposed a method for producing attosecond pulses to reveal this world and to allow us to access the very small and the very fast. Dr. Corkum joined the NRC as a postdoctoral fellow in 1973 to work on experimental physics. In 2022, Dr. Corkum received the Wolf Prize in Physics alongside his European collaborators for pioneering contributions to ultra-fast laser science and attosecond physics. He now co-leads the NRC and University of Ottawa Joint Center for Extreme Photonics and is a professor at the University of Ottawa. The Killam NRC Paul Corkum Fellowship will support advanced study and research excellence. The fellowship will attract mid to late career Canadian and international scholars to collaborate with NRC's researchers. The new program will provide opportunities for external scholars to access our unique infrastructure and resources and to work with an NRC researcher to further Dorothy Killam's vision. we look forward to seeing the first cohort of NRC Killam Paul Corkum Fellows at the next year's Celebration of Excellence. It has been my pleasure to join in the celebration of the esteemed 2024 Killam Laureates this evening. You are driving the future of excellence in Canada, and I look forward to following your journeys. Congratulations to the laureates, and thank you to the families, friends, and yes, crying children who are following along with you in your journey. All of this is integral, as we know, to your success and your achievements, and we are including them in your recognition tonight as Killam Laureates. And I'd like to now allow Nyla to come back and conclude tonight's celebration, and again offer you our sincere congratulations to all those who have won tonight, and we look forward to your continued contributions to research for our country to build a better future for us all. Thank you.
That is a wonderful message with which to end the celebration tonight of the 2024 cohort of Killam Prize and Dorothy Killam Fellowship recipients. A huge thank you to all the recipients and their supporters in the audience. And thank you to every one of you who have spoken tonight and their guests. Events like this are possible due only to relentlessly detailed planning. So a huge thank you to the National Killam Program team for their hard work in bringing this event to life. Please don't forget to listen for more from the laureates on our program and an episode coming soon. See ideas. Thank you all for being here tonight. Have a safe journey home and have a good night. Thank you.